Yes, for the first panel, I'm calling to the stage Guagliano, who is working with CAPS, one of the leading think tanks in Europe.
Okay, thank you. Yes, good afternoon and thank you very much. Good start. Let's say if I could call the three which are here to the panel. It's Ondřej, the member of European Parliament, Alex, and there are two other people online, yes, and Julien. So pleasure to meet you. Ondřej in the middle probably, and then the two market representatives next to him, and then the two other people are online. Rock couldn't be here, unfortunately. He fell sick this morning, but he's still speaking to us, so very good. And then there is Claudia from ESMA. Bertie suggested to start with Claudia. To start with Rock. Let's say that we have a view on where we stand from a Commission perspective, that they have a bit of an introduction on, what was driving this process about 2 years ago and where are we now, and how you look at where we are now. And then I will pass the floor to Ondřej, and then I will pass the floor to Claudia before passing on the floor to the two industry representatives. So first, Rock, welcome, you hear us, I hope. Let's say I saw you on the screen a moment ago. So could you share your views on how happy you are or not happy you are today about what is on the table and what is almost adopted?
Thank you very much for inviting me. I think Marina made a very good introduction already to MiCA. I would just like to maybe emphasize some objectives of MiCA as like setting the scene, and also what kind of obligations do we have in MiCA, because this is important to know also in the light of the recent turmoil that we are witnessing around the world in crypto. Just on the objectives with MiCA, as it was already said, we want to promote innovation, but at the same time we are also addressing the risks that arise from this new class of assets. So these risks are mostly investor protection, market integrity, financial stability, but when they are used as a means of payment or exchange or store of value, we are also addressing the risk in terms of monetary policy transmission. How do we promote innovation? We promote innovation actually by establishing a legal framework. So actually to bring in the currently unregulated crypto assets into the regulated space. So it's a legal certainty, predictability, which is also very important for market operators. Then there will be a possibility to just establish in one member state and get authorization there, and then scale up activities across all EU member states, because currently somewhere it's not regulated, somewhere it's regulated. So crypto asset service providers would need to establish in more member states, and also there would be different frameworks. So this kind of harmonization or unification is very important. And finally, also we will also give a kind of certain legitimacy to this sector, because crypto asset service providers will be kind of financial institutions at par with other financial institutions that are currently regulated by EU financial services legislation. Just some important obligations, because we know, where are the problems, what also happened, the recent developments. And here I would just like to first stress it will be a lot on transparency and disclosure. Because the investors, the potential holders, will be informed what kind of crypto assets they are buying, because the issuers will need to disclose all relevant information and about characteristics of the token in their white paper. So here we were inspired by the prospectus regulation. For classical traditional financial instruments, you have prospectus, and here we have another information paper, which is a white paper. And what is also important, in the same manner, you will also have a kind of liability, what is stated in the white paper, so that the information is correct, that it's not misleading. So there will be possibility for also to claim damages if there was a detriment because of that. This is one, but when it comes to so-called stable coins, where the crypto assets stabilize their value in relation to another assets or official currency. In MiCA, we call them asset reference tokens and e-money tokens. Asset reference tokens, if they peg their value to to another asset or basket of assets, but when it's only to one official currency, it's e-money token. And for those, we have more robust provisions. So all those issuers will need to be authorized within the European Union. There will be prudential, organizational, governance, and conduct of business requirements on them. What is important? Mandatory redemption rights. So you can always redeem your token with them. And when it comes to e-money tokens, it's at par. So if it's $1 worth, you will get $1 back, or €1, you'll get €1 back. And also in terms of, with regards to arts, it will be the market value of what is the pack value, what is it is reference to. So these are very important safeguards. Also for crypto asset service providers, we will have a very strict obligation in terms of being authorized within the European Union, and also again similar prudential, organizational, and conduct of business requirements as we have for other financial institutions. There will be provisions that will be general to all crypto asset service providers, but also specific, for example, for custody. There will be a segregation of assets requirements, so legal segregation. So in case of insolvency, there will be no recourse on those assets that are in the custody. There is also an obligation that you cannot use these crypto assets on your own account. And what is also important is, for example, very kind of similar requirements that we have for conflict of interest. So this will apply also for issuers and for crypto asset service providers. These are just an example of some requirements that MiCA regulates. I just forgot what is also important is in terms of market integrity, that we also have market abuse provisions that we were actually that are expired on what we have for traditional financial instruments. So we will also address this concern. And in terms of monetary policy, we have certain limitation on stable coins when they are widely used as a means of exchange, because if these are arts or e-money tokens that are reference to non-EU currency, there may be an issue in terms of monetary sovereignty, and therefore there are some limitations as to the issuance of those and certain caveats and safeguards. Also in relation to the ECB, which has actually the veto right in the process that can stop a project that would endanger monetary sovereignty. So again, it's a project. It's a new legal framework. We are the first in the world that we introduce comprehensive legal framework. So not only covering stable coins, covering all crypto assets that are currently not regulated, stable coins, crypto asset service providers, and also rules on market abuse. Maybe on the timeline now, it is the compromise text is already publicly available, but it's not yet redacted. So now lawyer linguists are working on it and prepare it for the publication, which is expected in spring next year. Then we will have transitional periods for so-called stable coins, asset reference tokens, and e-money tokens. They will enter into applications 12 months after the entry into force. So it means spring 2024, and the rest of the MiCA, so general crypto assets, crypto asset service providers, and market abuse by the end of 2024. So this is the current timeline, and we are just convinced that this legal framework is topical, it's necessary. It's even more necessary in the light of the recent developments in the crypto.
Can I ask you a question on this, Rock? Because you seem to be convinced that the framework is still solid after what we have read over the last weeks. But you mentioned some things like market manipulation, market integrity. If I remember the rules in the draft proposal, they're very light as compared to what exists for traditional financial services providers. There's also with the NFTs case, something which has come to the light is that for non-fungible tokens, you don't need to have a prospectus approved in advance. And we've seen that FTX has valued non-fungible tokens on its balance sheet. Meaning, on these two items, are you still convinced that the framework is good?
We are still convinced that the framework is good in terms of market abuse. These were closely modeled on market abuse regulation, and also in the co-legislative process, there have been further reinforcement of the rules also introduced by the member states. So the compromise text now includes even more robust provisions on market abuse. But again, we didn't want to copy in everything what is for traditional assets, but to put them in MiCA in proportionate manner, because MiCA includes lots of rules on issuance, on crypto asset service provider, market abuse. So we didn't want to copy in the whole MiFID, the whole market abuse regulation, but we think that it's still proportionate to what we are seeing on the market, and that they will work.
Okay.
On the
NFTs, yes.
NFTs, yes, they are actually in principle excluded. But maybe we will discuss this later. But I think this was not the only problem that was in this event of default. I think there are other problems, and lots of them would be addressed by MiCA and also by the MiFID and traditional financial services legislation, because it was not only crypto assets that are not regulated, but also financial instruments that were.
We turn to Ondřej. Thank you, Rock, for this introductory words. Ondřej, who was the rapporteur in the European Parliament, knows everything about this. So probably the same question to you. How do you now look at this after all which we've seen over the last weeks? Are you still convinced this is a good piece of regulation? Because you're also a co-legislator, so meaning co-responsible.
Exactly. Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me fine. I fully assume the responsibility. Thanks for the question. I think we had a very good exchange recently in the Econ Committee, exactly on the FTX case with the European Commission and ESMA representatives. And I think, we really should look at the complexity of the FTX group of companies. And well, the crypto part is obviously an important one, and the crypto sector has been the most impacted by the events related to it. But I think, based also following up to what Rock has just said, the MiCA would introduce some specific requirements and some specific, even possible safeguards that would help find solutions or maybe even prevent some of the events of happening. Maybe we would have better information on the FTT token, for instance. Maybe we would have a better look into how the structure works. But all these would be under the assumption that the FTX will be MiCA licensed company in Europe. We don't know that. I mean, maybe it would be, maybe not. What we know, that if the one company from the group was MiFID licensed company in Cyprus. And so this is an existing regulatory framework on financial instruments. There is a regulatory framework that is there. There is a supervision that is there. And in my view, and I think it was mostly confirmed by the discussions that we had, this one completely failed. So if I have a takeaway from the events, it's if we want to make sure that the MiCA will have an impact in the real world, the one that we expect, because we're still discussing mostly a theoretical concept. It's now on the paper, but it hasn't been applied. The key would be the implementation and the enforcement and the supervision from the national competent authorities and other authorities involved into it. And I think this in my view, that's the key lessons learned from the FTX case. And also, I think one of the most important issues that we should, but also not only us as regulators or supervisors or the public authorities, but I think including the industry, we should engage now the most. When MiCA enters into force, there will be a huge wave of licensing procedures going across Europe for those companies who would like to carry on their businesses. And I think this would be, let's say, the first test of how MiCA works, but we should be all ready for that, so that the sort of kick off of the legislation in terms of real implementation goes as smooth as possible and has not, let's say, more procedural or formal bureaucratic impact on the industry. But I think we should see where MiCA starts what is its main scope, what are their possible limits in this regard, and how that's an important thing, how it fits the existing landscape of the financial services legislation that we already have in the European Union.
And on that issue, if I could ask you, I mean, the argument which has been made against MiCA is same risk, same rules. If we've seen with the FTX case, this is risky, and this affects the entire financial business. So why shouldn't we have the same rules for basically similar risks as we've seen? And as I just said to Rock, I think the rules are much lighter than the ones which exist for traditional financial industry, like for MiFID licensed firms.
I think really it depends on the aspects. On some of the issues, I think we actually introduced in MiCA quite a strict regulatory framework, and I think my frequent criticism was how far we went with this framework with in terms of regulating stablecoins. I think we made we put the prudential measures as a priority, and I'm not sure it was necessary at this point. But I think at the same time there is actually a lot, and Rock has mentioned it. There's actually a lot that has been inspired by the existing regulations for, let's say, the traditional financial services. So it's the prospectus regulation, which was translated in white papers obligation in MiCA. Number of MiFID requirements, the same then in MiCA. Market abuse, the same in MiCA then in terms of requirements put on CASPs. But just maybe sort of a provocative answer. I mean, depends on the angle that you take. For instance, I believe that we could have been even more careful with applying the same risks, same rules, same activities, same risks, same rules, principles, by better, for instance, differentiating between various CASPs. We have CASPs who are actually, who will be licensed under the MiCA, and it's basically, 2 or 3 guys trying to, innovate in the area, trying to find some business case. They will be CASP under the MiCA rules as the same as all these global exchange places. And I think we could have been much more proportionate in this regard, distinguishing the impact on the market, the size, the capitalization, and better applying these same activity, same risks, same rule principle.
Valid point. Let's say we could have been proportionate because there is a huge difference between different Bitcoin providers or whatever, NFT providers, etc. in Europe. Claudia, we turn to you. Thank you for joining us from Paris, and we want to hear from you how ESMA is preparing for this, because I think you will have many tasks, and if you could explain a bit how much work you have and a bit what the timeline is from your perspective.
Yes, and thank you very much for inviting me today, and apologies for not being able to be there with you in Brussels. Indeed, in terms of preparation for the secondary rulemaking phase, we have quite a lot to do because MiCA includes a considerable number of level 2 and level 3 measures that we need to be developed before the entry into application of the new regime. And we already heard in the last 20 minutes how important it is that this legal framework enter into force and is applied. The responsibility for the production of this level 2 of this measure, level 2 and level 3, are divided between ESMA and DBA. And there is also a limited role in terms of policy work for ECB, and one case only for EIOPA. And in terms of timeline, it will be mostly 12 months, starting from the entry into force of MiCA. And we are talking about more than 30 level 2 and level 3 measures. And we are coordinating a lot, of course, because we need to work together with EBA, and we have already started to do that, and we are, let's say, fully in motion in this direction. I want to say also that pending MiCA, because it will take still let's say 18 months for the entry into application of MiCA. We are also working on different other work streams, starting from the monitoring and reporting on market developments and risk related to crypto assets of all different types, and we report on this in our ESMA report on trends, risk and vulnerabilities. And also we have established already in March 2022 a task force with our national supervisors. What is the idea? We don't have yet a regulation for crypto assets, and so we are working together with the national authorities to see how can we help each other, so from ESMA side, but also across different competent authorities at national level, to see which challenges are there, because we have seen in the last weeks, and we see that the risks are already there, and to exchange information, to exchange best practice, to exchange supervisory action that can be taken already at this case. And so this is very important in the transition phase to MiCA. Also, we have done, because as it is still an unregulated sector, we have done at least 2 warnings to consumers in the past to alert investors of the risk related to investment in crypto assets. And the last one was done together with EBA and the EIOPA in March this year. And finally, and maybe we will discuss about it later as well, and I think there will be a separate panel focused on this. I think that it's very important that there is a lot of international cooperation and coordination on this topic, and that's why we are also participating to different international work stream dealing with the crypto assets at FSB level, IOSCO level, and also at EU level with the ESRB. Because as we have seen, these are global issues. MiCA is the first regulatory framework that is being introduced, but most of these challenges are not only European.
Thank you, Claudia. Could you probably elaborate a bit on, first of all, the workload? Because we know that Kampa has been vocal saying, look, we can hardly cope. This is extremely difficult and we are not paid for this. We don't have the budget for this. Is there something foreseen, or are you working already on contributions from crypto providers for your work, which I think is part of the proposals? And then secondly, on this, what we have now, can we preempt MiCA? Can we preempt MiCA to existing providers? Because one of the problems which we have is it takes one more year. I mean, can we to some extent already have some harmony in applying the rules today?
Okay, so of course it's challenging from the resource perspective, but we have put in place, I mean, what we can to build the framework and to implement and to write, let's say, the level 2 regulation. It takes time, and most of these level 2 mandates that we have are very technical. And it's difficult to say we take less time to write what we need to write, because we need to have a regulation that is meaningful, that is working well, and is adequate to the risk that we have in the market. So, and I think what I mentioned, this task force that we have with the national authorities, goes a bit into this direction, to try to see what can be done already waiting for MiCA to address the risks that are there in the market.
And then on the contribution from the providers, from the sector to the work you do, you will have an implementing guideline or implement a regulation on that as well, meaning the financial contribution from the sector, from the crypto providers.
I didn't get the question. Can you repeat?
The question is the financial contribution from the crypto providers. Have you already got a view on how to finance for your work?
I mean, the financial contribution will be for, I mean, we are not direct supervisors as ESMA, so there is no fee-based contribution from the crypto providers for ESMA.
Okay, so that's only to the national authorities.
Yes, exactly. And DBA is supervising the significant asset reference tokens. Okay. So for EBA, for EBA,
for EBA, yes, yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So we turn to two industry representatives here on the panel. We have a crypto exchange and we have a custodian, if I remember it correctly, a crypto custodian. So some of this, but you can explain it, meaning I don't know entirely, so that is then up to you. So we start with Alice and then Julien. So how do you look at first of all, let's say what has happened over the last weeks and at MiCA and preparedness for the new rules?
Well, yeah, thank you. Does it work? Yeah, okay. Well, it seems like that the crypto market is coming of age. We have seen this in traditional markets. It's nothing new. But what was proved now is that a regulated exchange is a safe exchange. And having this in mind, I would like to emphasize that Bitstamp is actually regulated as a payment institution in the European Union. We also have a bit license in the United States. We have acquired more than 50 licenses worldwide. And therefore, we strongly support MiCA. We believe that MiCA will make the world safer for all of us, for the clients, for crypto asset services providers, and also MiCA will create an even level playing field. As a licensed payment institution, Bitstamp right now already fulfills quite a few requirements of MiCA. For example, our senior management is approved to be fit and proper. We do monitor our markets for market abuse. If you look at what's happening at the exchanges, you will see that we don't have any pump and dump schemes. You can see a lot of those at overseas exchanges. We certainly do not use our clients' funds. On the opposite, the fiat funds we have to be separated because we have them as a payment institution. Also, the crypto funds are safe with our custodians. But if I go back to the question whether or not MiCA would have prevented the FTX events, certainly not the part that talks about the white papers. Because when the competent authority authorizes a prospectus, the competent authority only checks whether or not the prospectus has all the ingredients it has to have. It does not check whether or not the issuer of a bond will be able to pay back his debt. But the part of MiCA that would, if not prevented the FTX events, but make sure that those events are found out earlier, those are the corporate governance requirements that are in MiCA, the risk management requirements that are in MiCA, the internal controls requirements that are in MiCA. I mean, from what we have seen that has happened with the whole FTX thing, this is, for me, from the point of view of somebody who works for a crypto exchange, this is really unbelievable. And MiCA might not have prevented somebody from acting maliciously. Regulation has never done that. If this was possible, then we would not have murders and crime at all. But what MiCA would make possible, MiCA would make possible that a supervisor, of course, if the FTX would have been incorporated in the European Union, where MiCA will be in force, would have found out about all those things earlier, and the clients in those cases would be able to get more out of their exchange.
Okay. Could you then tell what is your current regulatory context? You said you're regulated today, then under PSD2. And what will be the difference then, kind of PSD2 today and MiCA tomorrow?
Well, MiCA has different requirements. A part of MiCA deals with the investor protection. The part on the white papers is all about is that the clients should have enough information to make an informed investment decision. This is something that is copied out of MiFID, and this is something that is very welcome. Then again, the market abuse rules would be the crypto assets, the crypto exchanges would be obliged to follow them, which is again something new. Then the things that are new, the whole provision of services to clients is now streamlined, and there are rules how it should be done. I mean, we know how clients' orders should be treated. There will now be the duty of best execution, which is again very much in favor of clients. MiCA will benefit us all because at the end it gives us legal certainty. Yes, we are certified right now as a payment institution, but this license does not cover everything we do. It covers only the fiat part of our business. It does not cover the crypto leg of our business. And MiCA and the license to run a crypto exchange under MiCA will actually cover everything we do.
Okay, thank you, very clear. We turn to Julien. Julien, welcome in this panel as well. I mean, probably if you could start a bit explaining your business first, because I never understood exactly what a custodian is in crypto, because you have virtual assets. What is it? And then what do you think about, again, also the events which have happened over the last weeks, because we have read a lot about this custody, soi-disant custody, which existed under FTX, and that there was almost nothing, and how safe the framework will be, which we'll have now.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation, Mr. Lanoux. And I will explain what Ledger is actually. Ledger is an IT provider. We are providing hardware and software in order to secure not directly the crypto assets, but the private keys, so the password associated with your crypto assets. So that's why we are actually an IT provider, and we do not do any custody services.
But under DORA, you will be regulated as well. You're under DORA.
Perhaps, indeed. Of course, we will be regulated by other regulation, but not MiCA, not directly TFR on the MLR either. So apparently everybody here in this panel loves MiCA. I will be the bad guys on this panel. Of course, we need one. I don't think, of course, MiCA is important, but I think that the way it has been drafted could be a bit problematic for several reasons. And one of them, first, I think it's about centralization. You know, the FTX case was terrible, is still terrible for the industry. But it brings on the table some very interesting topics. One of them is about centralization. And also the paradox of advocating ever more centralization, ever more third-party provider within the European regulation. And actually with MiCA, with TFR, with the AMLR, we are creating a new type of third-party provider called the crypto asset service provider. And then we are creating a new type of single risk of failures. And it is a problem. The problem lies, this is where the problem lies. And the problem with the FTX and with the exchange in general that do some custody services is that they manage the private keys of their clients on their behalf. But if something bad occurs, then the clients actually won't be able to recover the fund. And it is a shame. And here we are recreating this with the law, with the MiCA regulation. If we need to pass through this kind of entity, we are recreating a risk of single point of failure, while the blockchain was about eliminating this single point of failure. So this is a big paradox. And of course, I often hear that MiCA would have prevented actually a kind of FTX case from happening in Europe. Frankly speaking, I'm not 100% sure of that. Of course, you will have some segregation rules. You will have some rules on conflict of interest and all the thing. But here, the FTX case, the failure of FTX is about fraud, scam. It's about individuals in terms of lack of transparency, mismanagement, and it's not a crypto failure. It's a human failure. It's a fraud. So, I mean. For example, Lehman Brothers in 2008 was regulated, but still the fraud did exist. You know, bad loans, illiquid collateral or over leveraging have actually existed in the traditional finance, and the traditional finance is over-regulated. So I'm not convinced that regulation will completely is the complete solution. Sorry, for this kind of risk. And I don't think that more regulation will avoid this kind of fraud. But education and great tools and cybersecurity tools can do that. For example, if every FTX clients had used a crypto, a self-custody solution, for example, like a Ledger Nano, completely randomly, actually, they would have had no problem to recover the fund. It's a reality, and you don't need to over-regulate it for that. And the problem we've got with MiCA, not really with MiCA, but except for this point of failure, but with the TFR and the AMLR regulation, is that some MEPs want actually to ban this kind of solution for European citizens, and it's a shame, because proposing ban just for banning things or proposing very restrictive rules that actually leads to a de facto ban for such a very important cybersecurity tool, it's something bad, I think, for the industry, but also for the protection of the European citizen. We can talk about the TFR or the AMLR. On MiCA, just quick word. So, I mean, MiCA is good, but it could have been better. I mean, it will be very cumbersome for the industry. It would be very cumbersome for the EU citizen. For example, for a crypto asset service provider, they will have to draft a white paper for every crypto they will have to list on their platform. Okay, how you deal with Bitcoin? I mean, who want to be responsible for the drafting of the white paper on Bitcoin? Nobody, obviously. You want to launch a stablecoin in Europe? Good luck with that. I mean, you will have to be brave. I see some of them want to. Please continue to do that. Do not go away. But it will be super hard. We avoid a ban of proof of work. So we avoid also a DeFi regulation through centralized entity. And at the end of the day, you know, the MiCA will create a monopolistic situation for big crypto asset players. And I think it's quite a shame for, you know, medium or small firm, European medium and small firm dealing with DeFi, dealing with crypto in general, dealing with stablecoins, that for them it will be hard to first have clarity, just legal clarity, because here, I mean, MiCA is very broad. We will need some level 2 text to have more clarity on certain aspects, for example, NFTs. But they will also be very cumbersome by this regulation, and I think it's a pity. We could have a more balanced approach, but yeah. So
okay, thank you, Julien. One quick follow-up question. Let's say, how will we control third-country providers, not licensed third-country providers, to come into the European market? Since you're a tech provider, is there a way you can stop a third country from entering the European market without having a license?
You want to stop a non-EU firm to come into Europe without any proper license?
Which is not following MiCA, but we get the advertisements on our social media, buy this, and it's not licensed. How can you stop this?
Well, I mean, it is a question of reverse solicitation. I mean, it exists in the traditional world. It has been copy-pasted in MiCA. So the rule of reverse solicitation are quite unclear. They are different in every member state. Member states have different interpretation of what is a reverse solicitation. So of course it's a problem, but you can force, I mean, a US or an Asian crypto firm to be in Europe or to follow the rule of Europe if they are not directly targeting the European citizen. You can do that. At least you can to date. But if you want to, then you have to think about a third country regime into MiCA, but rather than a reverse solicitation.
Exactly, but it's not there at the moment.
And it's not there, exactly.
Okay. Thank you. I look around for questions, but we can have a second round for comments, because we wanted to discuss also DeFi and where we are with this. Probably I take two, three questions later, but if I could ask Rock how we are preparing for, because we were already in decentralized finance, whether MiCA is too centralized, yes or no, but Rock, how we are preparing for DeFi, because it's also part of this package which was proposed about 2 years ago. But very briefly.
Yeah, so it's traditional financial services regulation applies to intermediaries. So we are regulating intermediaries and MiCA as well. So there is an identifiable issuer person behind the project, even if it claims or markets it's decentralized, MiCA will still apply. But the issue is for really fully decentralized finance. And in this case, the MiCA will in principle not apply. Of course, if it's about Bitcoin, it will be still exchanges on which Bitcoin is transacted, will be fully regulated, and custody rules and everything will be in place for that. But when it's really a service provider where there is a fully decentralized or issuer that is fully decentralized, MiCA will actually not apply because there is no identifiable person behind. But there are, of course, always reports that it's very rare that this happens in practice. But then we will have in MiCA, as we said, we try to strike the balance between what is the proportionality of obligations in MiCA, but we will have the opportunity to review MiCA. It will be on after 18 months after the entry into force, when we will look at the issues that were somehow not definitely answered in MiCA, like decentralized finance, environment, NFTs. And there we will also look at the feasibility of regulating decentralized finance.
But you have your decentralized finance package as well. You have your whatever, your regulatory sandbox for decentralized finance.
Yes, these are still we are monitoring the situation, but we have not yet. We are still at the stage of policy development, monitoring also in coherence with international standard setter, FSB, and others are preparing the reports on decentralized finance. We are working on it, but we have not yet issued any initiatives in this regard. We had a recent report on decentralized finance that was contracted out. We are also working on one project on embedded supervision. So we are exploring, we are looking at how to the possible regulatory approaches would be, but we are not yet there. So there is a DLT pilot. It's still something which is about centralized finance.
Okay. Ondřej, can I turn back to you? Just ask you this question about this, which your neighbor said about it's becoming too centralized. Basically, it's going against the philosophy of what crypto was about. Let's say to have this small, mushrooming of crypto initiatives will be much more difficult under this new piece of regulation. And then link it to, say, what you see or what you hear about decentralized finance.
Yes, well, indeed, I think, we can here discuss the principle. I think, if you look at the beginning of crypto, it was actually meant to, be a parallel or complete outside to any world that is regulated. We are trying to regulate an industry that has become, that has started as an alternative to regulated world in general. But I think that would be more philosophical debate. I think what the regulatory framework is about is actually really setting rules for the entities that are carrying out their businesses in and I think very much growing industry. But I think I share some of the concerns that Julian meant, and I think I also mentioned some of them in my introductory remarks. Let's see where we move on the DeFi. Well, first of all, I'm really glad that we all agreed, also with the Commission, but also with the member states, that it's not good time actually to start with the regulatory initiatives for DeFi. I think they would be way too soon. And also, I think it will rise a lot of challenges in terms of how exactly the regulatory framework should look like, and who will be responsible for what. And I think we will also see some of them already with MiCA application. Yeah, the question like who will draft the white paper for Bitcoin? I have no idea, but I would rather bet that first entity who will draft a really good white paper for Bitcoin that would be authorized and licensed, that will be just sold across the industry, and all the others will just have it. you know, why would you draft additional one if there is only one that is working well? I think there was a pretty good secondary market with white papers that we are creating. But let's see. That would be my guess. But I think with the DeFi, it was actually good not to have a clear specific regulatory framework right now. We tasked the Commission actually to look into the issues more broadly and to come back to the co-legislators after the 18 months with a specific study. I don't think we specifically ask for review or legislative proposal. I think that is an open-ended. I would rather stick to the idea that, you know, once we have MiCA in place and application, let's try to stick to it as long as possible as it makes sense, because this is something that would create the stability and the predictability also for the businesses. And then only if we see some failures or some inefficiencies to actually start addressing them. But let's have, you know, this debate once the Commission actually comes back to us with their findings. I think in the meantime there will be also some developments in the industry, and I would also be very much in favor of, you know, looking into the technological solutions, because we don't need on everything a specific regulatory framework. We went through this debate and the TFR regulation, and you know how we can actually follow the information linked to the self-custodian wallets, etc. So I think there may be some other solutions based on the use of technology, proper use of technology, rather than having everything written on the paper, black and white, as a strict regulation. So I think can be actually in the future a combination of those approaches.
Okay, thank you, Ondřej. Claudia, you have something to comment upon the regulatory burden. I mean, the paperwork for all these, the white papers you have to submit, but also on this issue of centralization versus decentralization?
Yeah, maybe on DeFi, to say that DeFi in the crypto ecosystem is relatively new, even if it's true that it's growing very fast. We are working on this. As Rock mentioned, there are a lot of work streams, a lot of analysis to understand also what do we mean by DeFi, because DeFi is still used as an umbrella term to describe a variety of different things, different projects to replicate functions that are already in the traditional financial markets. How can we replicate them in a decentralized way? But it's important also to say that so far, and this is true also for the crypto market itself, it looks like quite self-contained. So the decentralized services are at the moment, products are at the moment, let's say, traded with other participants of the crypto world. So the participation of the traditional market to DeFi is still limited, even if there is quite a lot of interest. And we observe this also looking at the market with the fact that the contagion within the crypto market itself is very high, but still very limited to the traditional financial markets. So also with the collapse of FTX, we have seen that the impact of financial markets has been almost zero, almost very limited. And this means that still the crypto market is quite close, let's say, not so open to the rest of the market. But there is a lot of interest. We see institutional investors looking at it, investing in it. So we need to continue monitoring it.
Okay, Alice had a comment, and then I have 3 questions or 2 questions. Time for 2 or 3 questions. Yes, 1 minute, Alice.
Yeah, okay, I'll be brief on the question of DeFi. In the past, I heard some people, and they referred to DeFi as to a rocket, while traditional exchanges were referred to as a car or a bike. But the main problem actually is that all those vehicles drive between pedestrians, and therefore all those vehicles should obey traffic rules. And this is basically it. As long as a product is offered to retail clients need protection, needs uncertainty, and there should be rules that should protect those clients. I mean, it might be, I worked for a supervisor, maybe this is a supervisor speaking out of me, but for example, if you look at if one uses a DeFi trading platform, sandwich attacks are nothing unusual there. And basically sandwich attacks are a form of front running, and this is pure market manipulation. And this should be regulated somehow. Thank you.
Okay, I agree with your point. I have I had one question at the back. The lady at the back was first, and one question here, and one question in the middle. I see 5, 6, 7 questions. Try to be brief, try to introduce yourself, and have a question, no comment.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
Can
on.
you hear me? Yeah. Okay,
If
hi.
you say who you are.
Elodie Lamer with Tax Notes. I have a question. I hope I'm not too off topic, but it's part of the regulatory framework of the EU. Today, the Commission published its DAC 8 and exchange of information on crypto assets. It said that it was not going further than the OECD framework, but I was wondering if you could comment a bit on maybe the fresh concern that this proposal raised. Thank you.
Okay, there was a question here. Yes?
Thanks, Carol. Björk Smith-Meyer from Politico. The Bitcoin white paper, I was loving it if we could just get into that a little bit more. So Bitstamp, are you prepared to write that white paper? But then also, I was curious, Ondřej, when you said that you'd be curious to know who would then, well, once a white paper is written, could that then be sold to everyone else? Do you imagine that there could be a secondary market for white papers? Thank you.
There was a question in the middle. Yeah, I cannot take them all.
Thank you. My name is Jamila. I was wondering in regards to the regulatory bodies that will be overseeing and controlling compliance with the rules, because similarly to what has been mentioned, it's not that the FTX has happened in the absolute lack of rules. Similarly to the financial crisis in 2008, it's that they were able to exploit the gray areas of the laws that were existing. So given the decentralized nature of the technology that MiCA is trying to regulate, whether regulatory bodies themselves will have any difference in the way they will going to tackle the regulatory work, or is it going to be the same way they are doing in traditional finance?
Yeah, it's hard to speak on behalf of regulators. That I would leave to them. I still think that in practice, and let's call it like an estimate or like some sort of an expectation that I would have, is that obviously MiCA is a regulation, so it applies fully and completely across the EU Union. But the thing is that the application and the supervision will be in hands of national competent authorities, which obviously are free to adopt a specific approach based on how they do it. If you compare, I mean, we have a lot of directives in the financial world, right? So I mean, then it's fully in hand of the national regulators. But you can see that there is actually a difference of approaches. You can see that some of the regulators or supervisors are actually easier accessible. You know, they are open, for instance, to have a regulatory dialogue with the industry. Their procedures take less. Some of them are really strict, and that this is what I meant when I said that I think the key for the success of MiCA will be enforcement and application. Because if this is done properly, then it can be actually fine. If you know, there will be a regulator that will apply very easy approach, then obviously loopholes can appear. If there's, on the other hand, a regulator that will apply very strict approach, hardly giving out any license, you know, that actually can have an impact on the national context, but also on the way the MiCA is implemented on the EU level. But I think the fact that it's a regulation would also sort of tie hands for this freedom of application to national competent authorities. But it will be, in my way, one of the key factors for the success of it. On the secondary market with white papers, I mean, it was sort of definitely meant sort of a joke, but I think I mean that this is where we're heading, so sort of. If the CASP, so the exchanges are actually obliged to offer to their customers a white paper on a specific token that is fully decentralized, and you know there is no obligation, I think what the industry will do somehow, instead of in parallel drafting hundreds of same white papers, so they will try to share them. I don't know if this is something you can monetize, possibly, but I mean, I think there was more the idea to see, you know, what if there is a template, or you know, an example, or you know, something that you can use also for you. I mean, you know, if we were running two different exchanges, we would maybe even talk to each other, say like, you know, what will be the kind of information you will provide to your clients in terms of white papers. But maybe then, you know, we would have regulators from different countries, and they would require different things, or they would put emphasis on different things. MiCA regulation is clear on what should be in the white paper, but obviously I think there's always many ways how to comply with it. So I think there was more to sort of, you know, what would be the expectations.
Can I ask this question also to Claudia and to Rock probably? Claudia?
Yes, I think that the reply that has just been given is very good indeed. First of all, MiCA is a regulation which is already good because it applies directly in the member state. Second, it's not a topic, it's not an issue, let's say, typical only for MiCA, but it is across the different regulation and directives that we have in the financial markets in Europe. Of course, as ESMA, we always try to ensure what we call supervisory convergence. So to be sure that more and more the same practices are used in supervising financial markets. But the supervision is at national level, and so there will be, as has just been mentioned, some differences, and we'll need to live with them and to try to reduce these as much as possible.
Okay, do you have time for a second round of questions, very brief ones? And then, or Julien, you wanted to reply first to the tech question, very briefly?
Yeah, let's go. So we should definitely create an NFT on tokenized, you know, the white paper of Bitcoin, and put that on the secondary market. Maybe there is a business here. No, so on the DAC8 regulation, my opinion, but I just read it quickly, is that we go beyond the OECD regulation, and also the crypto assets service provider will have to verify and to actually collect some information regarding the tax information of their client, which is quite weird in terms of the protection of privacy, for example, which is by the way protected by the EU Charter of the fundamental rights. But yeah, but I have no other comment on other information.
How do you define sufficient decentralization?
The question.
Wait, I will bring.
How do you define sufficient decentralization, and how can a centralized compliant entity become decentralized and out of the scope of MiCA?
Fantastic question. You had one, or there was somebody else here? Yes.
So maybe this is obvious to everyone else in the room, and not to sorry. My name is Peter Pawlikowicz. I do regulatory monitoring for Bird & Bird LLP in Brussels. I don't know if this is an obvious question to others, but I wanted to ask about decentralized exchanges in terms of MiCA. And I was just wondering that, is it possible that any MiCA rules would be applied to some sort of, I don't know, a legal entity established by the core developer team, or just generally, does MiCA have implications for decentralized exchanges such as Uniswap or other entities?
Okay, was there another question here or here? Yes. And then we start.
Hello, I'm Hugo from New Economy Institute in Portugal. I was curious to know if the MEPs and the regulators in the room are aware of Julian's remarks in terms of how the industry is not so, is fairly critical of MiCA and doesn't see it, well, it's a very important regulation for sure, and it's going to be groundbreaking, but not everyone sees it as full of roses as the regulators usually portray it.
Well, so fantastic, interesting question. Ondřej, you want to start again, but very rapidly because we only have 5 minutes left, of 3 minutes, Bertie tells me.
Yeah, sure, I'm fully aware of it, and I think it's, we just heard Julien next to me.
And then you come.
But I have to say, and Julien, I think will agree. I mean, I had many meetings throughout the negotiations, and I also organized some of them, and I also organized one where Julien was actually taking part with people who were very critical to some parts of it, and I think it was both MiCA and the TFR at the moment where both papers were negotiated, and I think it really helped to clarify some of the concepts that maybe some colleagues in the parliament had on that issue. And I think, I mean, I'm not 100% happy about it, but this is what people in the institution say. The good compromise is such a compromise where nobody's happy. So I think we managed to strike a good balance. But now I think the key would be the application and to see, you know, whether it was actually a good balance in the end.
Okay, Ondřej. Rapidly.
I was just on the taxation. I think, I mean, we had just. I think for me, just I haven't really seen the details of the proposal, but I think for me would be the crucial, and we have the same fight also on the AML framework. I think we already have MiCA and the TFR that are politically agreed and will fully apply. So I think the key for everything we do now in terms of addressing the crypto assets in various aspects is to remain fully aligned and consistent with what is currently in MiCA and TFR. Because if we don't do that, then we create a huge, even regulatory and supervisory concern. So I think we have to remain strict. And there is a political agreement. It was not easy to get it. So I think anything we come from the Commission, anything that comes from other institutions has to be fully aligned with that. And to be honest, this I see as one of the advantages that we have regulatory frameworks such as MiCA in place.
Okay, Alice, you had a question you want to respond to from the first round, but then also probably something on this contradictory nature of having rules for something which is decentralized.
Well, yeah. Firstly, back to the question of the Bitcoin and the white paper, and if whether or not Bitstamp would be prepared to draft one. Well, my understanding of MiCA is that at the end we will have to draft it. And what is important here is basically that the one who drafts the white paper is only eligible for the information that is in the white paper. So, therefore, as long as you don't lie, you don't have to be afraid of anything, even if it is a white paper for a Bitcoin. I mean, MiCA does not require more for a white paper. Only information that enables a client to make an informed investment decision. And this is everything that should be in a white paper. But as far as DeFi, whether or not legislation can be applied to decentralized finance, well, to be honest, I have seen a lot of DeFi protocols, but I'm not sure that I have seen one that would be completely decentralized. And as long as there is somebody behind it, somebody who writes the code, somebody that counts the votes, I mean, somebody who gets the money out of it, the fees. All DeFi protocols that I have seen have somebody behind that actually, not maybe at the time being, but at the future, will make some profit out of it. And legislation should certainly be applied to such protocols.
Okay. Final comment from Claudia or from Rock? If not, we conclude. No final comment, Rock? No? Claudia, so we're a bit over time already, so I would like to thank this panel a lot. For me, it was extremely interesting. Thanks, Rock, Claudia, Julien, Ondřej, and Alice for this. What I learned, what I took away is that also the industry is not entirely happy with MiCA. So, fascinating conclusion. Thank you very much and give an applause.